Today, you better buckle in for a wild ride because the news and everything related to Multiversus and all the bad news is not over. As someone who's been involved with the game, involved with the community ever since the beta launch back in 2022, it's been such a wild ride of ups and downs, a lot of downs to be honest, and I just wanted to iterate how lacking the communication from this development company has been over the years. The thing we're about to read really reiterates that on how bad of a performance they've just had at giving us information, even in their final moments of actually getting a response on why this season 5 is the final season. And they just go on about saying, oh, we created some beautiful game and we just love the community and we're thank you so much. And that's all they really said. It's just even in their final moments, they can't actually grow a pair of balls and be genuine with their community, their audience that has been with them for so goddamn long. And it's just embarrassing. I put my heart and soul into this game, and what we're about to read just makes it even worse. Now, this is very circulating. If you're on top of the news, you probably have already heard, but there's a fellow individual that has shared with us another developer's thoughts and his point of view on Multiversus and the company PFG, and a lot of other good information. Now, take this with a grain of salt. This isn't a confirmation. This isn't 100% confirmed. But needless to say, there's some good info, and it really gets you thinking. It actually gives you a sense of like, wow, clarity, this is happening. This is what could have happened, you know? We're just gonna go through one at a time. Chaotic and bad leadership, which I would describe as a cycle of neglect and abuse. Founder, Tony, had a good idea and sold it to a multinational media company, and now that company can't get rid of the bastard with the good idea. Like, already it's starting off spicy, man, because you would think every time I say, fuck the developers, this game is trash, what are the developers doing? I'm not talking about the passionate ones, because there are some passionate people who have no decisions, who can't make calls on what goes in to the game. Those people I feel bad for, the people who actually cared about this game and wanted it to succeed. But people like Tony, you have to wonder, is he to blame? He's literally the director, and still people believe that no, he had nothing to do with it. It was all Warner Brothers. He had no control over anything. He's literally the director of the entire company who made the game. Of course he has some direction. He just accepted a buyout though, so I suspect he'll be rich, but fucked. Knowing everyone but his cronies hate him and want to edge him out. I wasn't at the company when the decision to do free to play was made. I came in to fix the economy basically, but the story is the same. Free-to-play is a high-risk reward model. If it works, you make way more money than a premium model, but the chance of succeeding is much lower because you have to get conversions. That just makes sense. The free-to-play model will make so much more money, but it's way higher risk. I mean, as you said, I feel like that's just obvious. Goal is to sell cosmetics, but the people won't bother, so you have to figure out how to sell something else. The logic of early release is easy. All players can get the character for free, but we tax the impatient. And there are more impatient than you think. Everyone else can wait or pay. I mean, yeah, there's you wouldn't do the free-to-play model if it didn't have that success. This is crazy because even this guy, the developer, is just finding out ways to incentivize payments in a better way, as if like the way they did it was terrible, but then he's trying to find the perfect balance in his experience to make it so we have to spend or feel a high incentive to spend. So like even this guy is scummy as well. Like it's just like reading this just makes me wish that the game was $60 or even 30, 40, 50, whatever, to just unlock every character and every future character. So this is saying like you need free-to-play players so that way the people who are actually spending feel like they have more incentive to spend because there's just more people involved with the game, like they can see their success. He's basically saying that we need to find a balance, getting the free players to play to where you can actually play for free, but also getting the spenders to spend. It's so crazy that people are even talking about that. But now we get in the problems of PFG. Tony had a great idea and connections to start a company to pitch it. Yeah, it's undeniable. He's also terrible at management and elements of design except for gameplay, while holding a Musk-esque sense of his own genius. This leads to an incredibly chaotic dev environment and incredibly jagged design. As he alternates between ignoring things and hyper-focusing on it, he'll micromanage the things he thinks are cool, like rifts, and ignore things he thinks are dull, like missions, and then sweep in one day and demand people change everything. Wow, that is just mind-blowing. The head of engineering is good in engineering, but it has the same terrible design instincts Tony does. I don't know Warner Brothers' plans, obviously, but from what I do know, they want Multiversus but without Tony. So they bought his company. Just edging out a CEO takes time in most cases. I feel like that would just be, wouldn't you just buy the company with, look, I don't understand. Couldn't you just pull your character licensing and just say, hey, screw you, we're not going to give you any more characters. We're going to buy your company. We want you out. We're going to take over your vision. We'll buy you out, basically. But he says, just edging out his CEO. So it's like, I feel like Warner Brothers, if Tony is that bad, I feel like Warner Brothers is at fault as well for not getting a system in place to get him out. If they really find that vision, why did that not be the case? Especially since he made himself the face of the game. Not gonna lie, I don't give a fuck about Tony or whether or not he's involved or not. I just wanted the game to be good. I just wanted the game that we all fell in love with to be good, whether Tony is there or not, because he didn't even communicate. He didn't say anything, even in the beta. Like, he made a presence in the beta, but not in the full release at all. If they want that route and trying to push him out of being a CEO, that would make sense that he wasn't even saying anything or making that many videos on it. Now here's some juicy parts about the QA team and stuff. We're getting deep in the nitty gritty. There is a QA team, but what there isn't is a QA plan. And that's quality assurance team, if for those of you who don't know. Those are the people who test the game to make sure it's good before it goes out. All play the game largely with Tony and do feedback about balance when they're not telling the other designers what to do. This is a problem because they're friends with Tony, or at least he thinks so. This makes QA incredibly inconsistent and biased because they just don't bother to test things sometimes, or just don't notice things, and they're immune to criticism. Trust me, don't slip up and tell Tony that QA didn't test something, he gets mad. Oh my god, if this is actually true, which a lot of the stuff I'm reading, it feels like it could be, Tony just fucked everything up. He's not fully to blame, but his ego and just him knowing all things would definitely have a huge impact with the mismanagement. Chaos and lack of plans is an overall problem at the company, but quality assurance is especially bad because there's no real QA management. Note, the positions are technically full, and they mostly just randomly play the game. That is just so sad. So, there are a ton of posts blaming Warner Brothers on here, and just knowing how game development works, that's really crazy. So a counterpoint. For all but the last 4 months, PFG was a second-party independent developer. Even after the buyout, Tony was still studio head. See, that's what I'm confused about. Why? And functional design director, similarly to the CTO, didn't change with the buyout. Warner Bros. Had little or no control over the internal testing and QA. That should just be in the rules of the buyout. Put simply, Tony had final say on every decision, and at most, Warner Bros. Could pressure him. And Tony frankly has Elon Musk syndrome and thinks he's a perfect design genius. This is Tony's and the CTO's failure, and it's a failure of leadership and direction. There are plenty of signs. I mean, like, it seems like they realize that, if this is true, and they should have just bought it out and said, screw you, we get full rights. How on earth would he be the CEO? Hard to push him out if you just literally buy the entire company. I don't understand. Inconsistent flip-flopping designs decision, often driven by overactive to social media influencers. Yep, we've seen that firsthand. That people complain, the heavy people complain, and then that's what happens, which is just terrible. You should not be listening to the masses. Yes, there's people who would give feedback, people crying. Like, you always see that in developers where they don't communicate, they don't give a shit about you, like, on what you're crying about. If you have a design for a company and a vision for a game, you're going to be internally talking. Those are the people you care about. Obviously, you look at feedback, but you don't just have a knee-jerk reaction and change based on that, because there's so many people who are wrong. You gotta have some balls and a backbone to say, no, this is how we're doing the game. We'll look at feedback for obvious things, but yeah. Really atrocious testing with both large gameplay bugs and data errors and events going live regularly. A toxic and chaotic dev environment. And all of this lands on the studio head, especially when they were second party, and let's be honest, by the time of the buyout, it was too late. I don't agree with that. I always presumed the buyout was to try to push Tony aside and get someone competent in place, but that takes time. How does that take time if you buy the company? You can just fire everyone. And then they go on to say that apparently there's posts and ideas that people think that PFG was doing all these decisions on purpose, which I've never thought that once. I've never thought that they're like intentionally trying to implement structures in the game to have them hate it, because they basically wanted to say that they were relying on the whales, I guess, or the people buying the game to actually keep paying. And season 4, he basically goes on to say season 4, that's almost like the last ditch effort on season 4. But I do like this saying right here. It's always better to have 20,000 $2 players than to hope for two $20,000 players. That makes sense. That's why you have to cater to the free-to-players and the people spending money in your game. And they have that data. It's always a balancing act. So they're just trying to look for the balance and try to make money, but also make the game good. Reiterating that PFG is a gameplay design-oriented team. They don't really have good systems design and never have. The beta was even more unattainable than release, although it was more generous to players. They're still designers, and all the designers have ideas, and Tony seems to have, and he goes on to Elon Musk syndrome. So the ideas come up and people cling to them. They convince themselves that this is the one idea that will save them, which seems that happened. Things like the arena mode, like why was that even added? Did they truly believe that was going to save the game? And then splitting the battle pass is fine in concept, but won't likely move the needle much. More tiers with worse rewards, however, won't fool anyone. Exactly. If they were, like, it would be fine if they had good rewards. It was just trash though. They're sitting on a whole bunch of old assets. Yeah, they reused the old assets. Putting them in the battle pass is foolish. And then fighter road is just dumb. The fighter road experience is functionally the same as fighter currency, except there are more limitations on spending it. Exactly, dude. I feel like what they would need to do, if they wanted to do something like that, you have a fighter road type thing to where you choose a fighter that you want to unlock over time. So no matter what you're playing, other characters, other modes, other like doing missions, you're getting experience over time, just slowly unlocks that character. But then you also have gold, which is just earnable, like when you get toasted, doing challenges, doing achievements, missions, you get gold over time. So you can use the gold to buy certain cosmetics, or you can save up and use the gold to buy fighters. That way you have a system in place to where you're getting gold to buy the fighters, and you have the fighter road to where you choose whatever fighter you want. So that way, even if you're not making enough gold, you're still unlocking that other fighter. I mean, without any experience at all, that would be a good free-to-play model, I think. I think you could sell, oh, you get 100 games you play, you get more gold. You get like 100% more gold or something like that. Those things would sell and people wouldn't have a problem with it. They're basically a decent game balance company, but they're trying to fixate on ideas to try to fix the game, and it just kept on not working out. They're listening to the masses on Twitter and Reddit or whatever, and they make these decisions and it just doesn't work out. They didn't know these decisions, so they're trying to make things up in their head that think that they're gonna be game changing and it's gonna save the game. So even with Warner Brothers buying PFG out, Tony is still the game director. Why? While Warner Brothers can technically force him to do things, in over a decade's experience in the industry, that only actually happens if the person is basically already on their way out. Why? From what I've heard, they really do believe themselves player first, but they listen to the wrong players. And I can attest to that, because there's so many people I know, like the pros, or even just the people around me who play the game a lot, have way better ideas, and then they implement things that I've never even heard about. Apparently a lot of people are complaining that I don't even hear about or see, but they do. So it's like, where are you getting these ideas? They act reactively to complaints rather than dig into player behavior and analytics, which that seems obvious that you would want to do. We're not reading this and saying, oh wow, we're just going to believe them at face value. This actually happened to Twitter. They blatantly, obviously, listened to feedback that the masses on Twitter were throwing out, especially in the beta. That's not just something that we're just believing at face value. That happened. Yep, and he goes on to say that they should have not done free-to-play because it's always a huge risk, especially with a fighting game. That's probably why no fighting game has ever even done it. He brought it with a free option up front rather than hoping for a huge free-to-play upside. I agree. Yep, and then the last thing he says, the most important thing is having an active, engaged player base. People who can hopefully convert into spenders. I don't have any experience in this industry whatsoever, except by, you know, listening to how devs act with the community and stuff, and playing games. And this seems like the most brain dead fucking obvious thing of all. Who would have fucking thought having the most important thing is having an active, engaged player base? Holy shit, who would have thought? Rather than focusing on, oh, let's try to get people to spend money and then hope that the player base is engaging in our game. What kind of backward shit is that? So trash. If you make a terrible movie, you're not gonna make money at that movie because people are gonna watch that beforehand and say, no, you can't add this to the theater. It's trash. I imagine the gameplay was good. They had a cool Rift event that was good, but they made the right decisions, listening to the right players, getting good updates. Like, to think that if they had that, they would be making money. I would be spending even more money on this game. A lot of people would as well. You can always get the free-to-play players spend a little bit of money, even though if they don't spend a lot, they're gonna spend a little bit. Crazies, this was very insightful for me to read. It was very eye-opening, and it was very refreshing to have someone actually give a deep dive, because PFG never did anything like that. The Multiversus account, hardly any communication. Whether you disagree with that or not, I'll die on that hill. They just did not communicate to the fullest in the way that they were communicating. Like the individual devs reaching out to certain people just made it feel worse, because then you get mismatched expectations, or you see like, oh, okay, they're communicating to them, but not me. So it's like, why weren't they just being upfront and honest? Any future developer, just be upfront and honest about certain aspects of your game, not everything. It goes such a long way to feel like I'm talking to someone rather than a robot who's just making a game. And here's another thing I'm going to show is Ajax did post this, but deleted it soon thereafter. It's pretty obvious that it was due to this Reddit post. It says, don't believe everything you read on the internet just because there's a picture with a quote next to it. And then there's just things like this where I kind of have to call Ajax out for never being upfront. The guy who always teased things, oh, combat overhauls, this and that, without any real substance. I'm inclined to believe this guy who went into detail on things that actually could heavily make sense. Like, you see how that doesn't mean anything to me, Ajax? This guy could be 100% wrong on some things, but this is the most fresh take I've ever seen in such a long time. So I'm inclined to believe a lot of what this guy is saying. Ultimately, I don't know what you crazies believe down below. You look at this game and IP and you think to yourself, we all thought to ourselves, that's why it was popular in the beginning, this game will succeed. This game has every right to succeed. Holy shit, what a good idea. Boom. It turns to shit. They ruin everything. Then you read what we just read and you think to yourself, this makes sense. Crazy, let me know if you guys believe it. Leadership and mismanagement isn't obvious. I'm sure Warner Brothers was to blame as well. Really do hope that Warner Brothers adds the IP and gives it to a different developer down the future, but it's very unlikely. Just a hope that we can all have. And maybe it's possible, guys. Maybe 3-5 years down the line, maybe we'll see something happening. Because if that does happen, I really hope that we don't know anything about it. We don't see anything. And then just randomly 3 to 5 years from now, we get like a Multiversus revival thing. But that's just wishful thinking. Crazy, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for watching my content, and let me know what your guys' thoughts on the whole thing down below. With that, crazies, I say good night and goodbye. Come on, crazies! Come on, guys, love you, crazy! Come on!